Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with another one sheet wonder tutorial for you. This didn't start off as a one sheet wonder, and it's not the most traditional take on a one sheet wonder, or not as much in line with some of my other ones, but I did technically use up a whole piece of pattern paper to make 2 cards with no scraps, and I thought you guys might enjoy it, and there might be ways to use this throughout the year, so I'm sharing that inspiration with you. I take my pattern paper and I cut it to 3 by 6, and then I'm going to cut it to 3 by 5.5, getting a little 1/2 inch strip off the bottom, because I'm going to use my pattern paper to cover the entire, the front of the card from the top to the bottom, but only 3 inches wide. Things are a little bit out of order. Usually I save the Copic coloring for the end, but filming got a little bit wonky. I lost some footage and had to re-record some stuff, so I'm going to put the Copic coloring here at the beginning because it makes the most sense with the flow of the rest of the video. I decided to take my inspiration from the pattern paper. I wanted to keep the colors on this card really, really simple so that the little girl would stand out. This is from the MFT Pile on the Hugs stamp set. I have used this in another one sheet wonder. I do like to see multiple ideas for one card, for one stamp set. So I'm using the same stamp set again, pretty close together here on my channel. But I think most of you are probably like me and liking to see the same stamp set used more than once, and getting a variety of ideas for it. So I decided to go with B39, 37, and 34. I have a really hard time choosing my very favorite Copic blues. There are so many that I like, and so I do own quite a few of them and use a lot of them. I decided to put the highlight down the center of the girl, so I'm going to have her with the shadows on both the left and right side, but the left side, the shadows are going to be a little bit smaller, and they're going to be a little bit bigger and deeper on the right side because her face is a little bit off center. I'm going to color her to look kind of like me because it says this is me cheering you on, so I thought it would be fun if I picked the little girl that looked most like me and picked some hair and skin tones that were more similar to my own. I'm using E272523 for the hair today, and I'm trying to add some interest by flicking in the colors. This can be really hard to do in the tight space of these small stamps, but as you get more practiced with it and more used to your paper, you will find that you can make some of those more defined strokes even in a small space. I'm going to use E11, E51, and E00 to color in the little girl's face. I did make a mistake, but this was the second time I was already trying to record this, so I left it in and I just figured I'd explain to you what I would actually do. I used E11 as the shadow color, and then I wanted E51 to be the midtone, but I put my markers in the wrong order, and so I grabbed the E51 thinking it was the E00, and I colored her whole face with the E51 as a highlight color, and that is much more yellowy than I was going for. I think it really should be restrained to just a small amount if you're going to use this Copic color combination. It makes for a good light Caucasian skin tone. I took E04 for the mouth. It's one of my favorite colors for adding for lips or the inside of the mouth. You might think to go with a pink, but I actually think that the very pinkish brown is more appropriate. I'm going to be using the C5, C3, C1, C00 combination for everything else on the girl, her cuffs and her mittens and scarf and boots. My thought here is that I want to stick to the colors that are in the pattern paper, so I'm going to make her cuffs appear white by just adding a very small touch of C1 and C00, and then her scarf, mittens, and boots will be more of a gray color with the C5, C3, and C1. Just a little bit of shadow in the sort of natural drop shadow type areas, such as the back of her scarf that's hanging out. Her jacket would be casting a shadow on it. So where it touches her jacket, I'm going to put a shadow there. Or I'm going to put a shadow where her cuffs meet the mittens, because again, it would cast a shadow onto them. So just really, really simple shadowing to add some interest, but nothing too hyper realistic, because this is of course going to just be sort of standing alone. There's no obvious light source with the pattern paper. I took the Lawn Fawn stitched Hillside banners and I cut them out of my favorite white cardstock, which is the Accent Opaque 120 pound. I deliberately cut them so they would be larger than the 3 inches that my pattern paper is, and that is because I prefer to adhere something down and then turn over the pattern paper or the paper I'm working on and cut it off. Because if I try to cut every single, like if I cut the 2 hills and the pattern paper all to 3 inches, they never quite wind up being the exact same size. And I prefer for everything to line up really, really nicely. So that's my logic and the choice that I'm making there. I am going to take some extra cardstock that I've glued together and use that in place of foam tape. So instead of buying foam tape, I take my scraps, like the ones that I'm cutting off the card right now, and I glue them together. Then I can glue them underneath little images or underneath anything else that I want to pop up. The way that I used the extra scrap was to place it along here at the bottom. Now, of course, you could potentially just pull your hills up such that you could see some of the pattern paper through the bottom, but because I knew I wanted to add dimension, I wanted that extra piece of paper because I wanted it to be on top of those hills. And I'm still going to kind of continuously try to trim and make sure everything is just the right size. I'm also going to give it a partial matte with this glitter paper. So I want the glitter paper to stand out on 2 sides, on the left and right of the star paper, and therefore most of the center of it is going to be covered. Since this is glitter paper, if it was some of my cheaper cardstock, I wouldn't so much mind just covering it up, and I do that all the time, but I thought I could get some extra embellishment by cutting some snowflakes out of the glitter paper that was going to be covered up. And so that's what I did. I took some Lawn Fawn snowflakes. I had thought originally I would just save them for a future project, but then I realized that I quite liked them in this instance. I started putting my ATG tape on the back of my pattern paper and then realized it's not going to stick. ATG does not stick to glitter paper in my experience. You're much better off with a liquid glue. I prefer Barely Art liquid glue. I've had a lot of success in no warping with it, so it's what I've continued to use. I also like that it's refillable, and I don't have to buy like a bunch of little glue tubes over time. I'm going to do the same thing where I take a scrap of cardstock to glue her down on the scene as if she is running down the hill, but also I want to get with this sort of the idea of the cheering. I took the cheering sentiment and I stamped it on a reverse confetti tag. I'll actually show this to you in a minute. As I mentioned earlier, some of my footage got a bit messed up, and so things are a touch out of order here. I apologize for that, but I looked at the sentiment that I knew I wanted to use. I found something in my stash, in this case, this reverse confetti tag that would fit it very well, and I stamped it in my MISTI. I like to use the negative die cut space to make sure that everything's lined up well in my MISTI without having to worry about getting magnets on the very small surface that I'm stamping. Then, because I didn't want it to be stark white, I wanted it to stand out from the white hills. That was part of the reason that I used the pattern paper, because you're going to use, as you just saw, this actually overlaps the pattern paper a little bit. But I also took my gray blender brush that has a little bit of ink still left on it, as all my blender brushes do, and I just took the little bit of leftover ink that's on it and used that to add a bit of grunginess to all the sides here. And then I'm pretty much done with my card. I added a little bit of blue twine to the edge of the tag. I don't like leaving the ends of tags naked, as you will. I like to add something into them, and so usually a bit of twine will work, and I thought that was another good place to add a pop of blue. So there's blue in the background paper, in the little image and then there on the tag. So it was in 3 places, and generally things in 3s look good, or like sets of 3. And so that's the same thing with the snowflakes. I picked 3 small snowflakes and I'm going to glue them down with my Barely Art glue in a little combination around her, and that will be it for my card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are interested in more craft tutorials, especially one-sheet wonders or ways to use 6x6 pattern paper, please subscribe to my channel. I will leave you links to all of the products that I used in the video description below, as well as to my other social media and the coordinating blog post where you can pick up your free printable PDF to go with this card. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.